The Wall Street Journal reports this, quote, a generation ago, conventional wisdom held that as China liberalized, its economy would come to resemble America's. Instead, capitalism in America is starting to look like China. The journal is referring to what it describes as state capitalism, a hybrid between socialism and capitalism, in which the state guides the decisions of normally private enterprises, end quote. We're watching that happen in action in front of our eyes, as News on Friday revealed that makers of AI chips, NVIDIA and AMD, have agreed to pay the U.S. government 15% of their revenue from sales in China. Washington Post reports on how that's being received. Quote, in addition to the policy problems, the U.S. Constitution flatly forbids export taxes, said Peter Harnell, the White House senior director for international economics under the Biden administration, in a Sunday post on social media. Christopher Padilla, a top export control official in the George W. Bush administration, echoed those fears. Quote, export controls are in place to protect national security, not raise revenue for the government, Padilla said. The arrangement seems like bribery or blackmail or both, end quote. So you got a Biden guy and a Bush guy who don't think it's a very good idea. But as Donald Trump extends more state power over markets and wreaks havoc on the global trade system with his tariffs and cuts taxes for the billionaires with his party's latest big, beautiful bill, he's betraying his own voters. He's betraying his central campaign promise to make life more affordable in the United States of America. In a recent AP poll, only about 1/4 of U.S. adults think his policies are helping them. That survey finds that roughly half say his policies have, quote, done more to hurt them. Annie Lowrey at The Atlantic calls Trump a degrowther. She writes, quote, without admitting it, the White House is pursuing a multi-pronged strategy to raise prices, suppress consumption, freeze production, and lower productivity in the U.S. Unlike typical degrowthers with their focus on long-term human flourishing and the conservation of the planetary ecosystem, Trump is engaged in financial nihilism. The president has at least once admitted that his policies will lead to Americans having less instead of more. Quote, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, you know? And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally, end quote. If only pricier dolls were the worst of it. Trump's broken promise of a strong economy and his ultimate betrayal of the MAGA voter is where we begin the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Professor of Economics and Public Policy at the University of Michigan, Justin Wolfers, is back. Also joining us, New York Times opinion writer, MSNBC contributor Mara Gay is here, and Princeton University professor, MSNBC contributor Eddie Glaude joins us. Justin, so much of what passed as passable or tolerable, or what was laundered in Trump 1.0 on the op-ed pages of the Wall Street Journal was the he's bad but part of Trumpism. You know, he's bad for firing Comey, but the economy's hot. He's bad for norms, but he's good for the economy. He's bad for the rule of law. He's bad for Russia's, ability to control the right-wing MAGA conversations around Russia, but he's good for the economy. He's obliterated all the buts. He is destroying the U.S. economy. He's going to hurt people who put their economic anxiety and hopes in him. Why?
Why? I think none of us know. There you might need a psychiatrist, not an economist. But it's definitely occurring. And I think the thing that makes it all the harder is it's occurring in slow motion. For instance, all the hullabaloo about tariffs blew up in April, but they really only went into effect 3 days ago. And so we're finally going to see the effect in a couple of months' time. If you think about the far deeper things, the things you were just talking about, which is the centralization of power in the White House, the movement away from markets towards a command and control economy, that's the sort of thing that slows down economic growth over a generation, not over a day, a week, or a year. And so if I were forced to answer your why question, what we're seeing here is not an economic theory. What we're seeing is someone who loves power. The problem with centralizing power is we do have economic theories about that. That's a command and control economy. If NVIDIA wants to do work, they have to call the White House. If Coke wants to figure out how much sugar to put in their beverage, they have to call the White House. If Harvard wants to know who to hire next, they have to call the White House. If Intel wants to know who the next CEO is, they have to call the White House, and on and on and on it goes.
Let me ask you to explain what it means now that we have, as you said, the tariff debacle is a slow motion car crash, I think we can call it. But this is where, according to the Yale Budget Lab, as of August 7th, consumers face an overall average effective tariff rate of 18.6%, the highest since 1933, which is obviously significant for folks who watch and warn about tariffs. What does that mean for shoppers, and especially back-to-school shoppers who are really out there right now?
Well, it means that as you go to the store, you're going to start to see, you're starting to see a little bit, but you'll see even more of these prices creeping up and up and up. And look, many of my friends on the right say, well, if you want to avoid paying tariffs by American, here's the problem with that. As soon as, for instance, Samsung raises their price on imported washing machines because they have to pay the tariffs, do you know what General Electric does? The American-made washers go up just as quickly. And we're already seeing the same thing happening with cars and across the board. So this is something that's going to undermine a range of industries, and not just foreign goods, because a lot of American-made goods are made with imported raw materials. They're made with imported machinery and so on. The one thing I want to remind you of, and this is why it matters so much more than any previous inflation, when we had inflation during the pandemic, it's the form of inflation where prices go up, therefore the boss has got a bit more money, therefore eventually they'll lead your wage to go up. With tariffs, costs are going up, the boss has got no more money, you will not get a wage rise to help you catch up for this increase in the cost of living.
So, Mara, whether people are feeling that yet, or understand all this yet, or have sort of heard the message loud and clear or not, isn't clear to me. But this is how people feel about grocery shopping. 86% of all Americans say grocery shopping is stressful for them. 53% say it's a major source of stress. 33% say it's a minor source of stress. Only 14% of all Americans say the cost of eggs and other groceries are not a source of stress for them. So it took him 6 months to completely betray almost 90% of all Americans.
That's right. And I think one of the reasons that you're seeing that data come out is that Americans have actually, for an entire generation now, and certainly over the past decade and a half, have seen their wages relatively stagnant and the cost of housing soaring. And so you have two fundamental problems underlying the American economy to begin with, which then makes the price of eggs an even more sensitive issue that hit voters and Americans with less money first, but you're going to see that penetrate into all classes in the country. You're already feeling that. It's also true that we know that the employment numbers are not as strong as we would like them to be. And so that means it's harder for Americans to move around and try and increase their income, because Americans aren't getting raises from one company anymore. You have to move around to increase your income. So all of that frustration is making them even more sensitive, I believe, to what we see now happening with the tariffs. And again, as you mentioned, Nicole, with back to school shopping, it's going to be hitting hard. And then, of course, after that, it's the Christmas shopping season. So this is a lot of pain that Americans are in for, and they're already struggling with the fundamental costs of housing.
You know, Eddie, I missed that first term, but, right? I thought Trump was an abomination because he was elected after the country heard him say, brag about grabbing women between the legs. And he talked about Megyn Kelly bleeding from every orifice. And he called for Russia to release Hillary Clinton's emails. But it was better that people didn't suffer this economic pain. It is not good that 90% of Americans feel deep anxiety about grocery shopping, because when people feel anxiety, they feel angry. And when they're angry, they're awful, right? And part of the cycle of keeping Trump in power is keeping people aggrieved. And I wonder your thoughts on this economic destruction and this intentional infliction of economic insecurity on his own voters?
You know, first of all, it's always great to see you, Nicole. It's hard to wrap my mind around and disentangle it from emotions. We have to interrogate that but. You know, he did this, but at least he's this guy. I mean, we have to begin to see what exactly voters, MAGA voters, were actually desiring, what they were trying to hold off, and why they would believe, in so many ways, this carnival barker, that Donald Trump, how he behaves in the political sphere. So I think, you know, the pain that people will feel, the difficulty that they're going to feel around the kitchen table will have an impact politically. I'm not sure what that will look like, but I do remember this, Nicole, just going back to how you opened up. I remember being on Morning Joe, and Alan Greenspan, the former chair of the Fed, was on. And we were talking about China. And I remember asking him, I said, China's trying to make a case that capitalism does not require liberalism to work. And he turned to me and he looked me dead in my eye and he said, China will lose. And what's fascinating, I don't see what Donald Trump is doing as a kind of mirror of what China did, but it's certainly the case, right, that his effort to centralize power, that his effort to dismantle democracy proceeds on the assumption that capitalism and markets can work without liberal commitments and norms and principles. And so when I combine that with the reality of the economic impact, we are in deep, deep peril as a country, it seems to me.